Hey everybody, on today's episode, I'm talking with Jordan Gilroy. He's a freelance web designer from the north of England, and he's going to share his story, how he became a freelancer, how he got into web design, and also how he's finding clients using LinkedIn, Dribbble, Behance, and his process. Lots of good stuff. Stay tuned. Hey Jordan, what's up? Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Finally made it.
So, dude, I really love your work. I always love talking with other web designers, other freelancers, hearing about, what's working for you, how are you doing stuff. So I'd love to get started kind of like hearing your story. How did you get into design? How did you become a freelancer? How did that work out for you?
Right, okay. It's not a very exciting story. I'll have to give you the heads up.
It's probably similar, like most people's stories. Did you download
Yeah.
Photoshop illegally back in high school?
Yeah, using LimeWire, I think.
Got it.
Yeah, I started off where did I first sort of pique my interest in design? It was probably through sketching, just through, drawing things. As a kid, my mum was very sort of artistic. She was very she had a thing for arts and crafts. So she used to make. I remember one thing that really set me off. She used to make like these bunny hats for Easter, and she had a really methodical way of drawing bunnies. And for some strange reason, that stuck with me. And yeah, I just remember sketching a lot as a kid, and that just progressed into wanting to design like album artwork for my favorite bands. So at the time, that might have been like Linkin Park or Limp Bizkit,
Yep.
the
Sounds
classic new
familiar.
metal
Sounds like my
bands.
high school as well.
uh, and then I just stuck with it. I felt like I was okay at it. So it's something I wanted to follow through into college from high school. So I did a diploma course in art and design. And from there, yeah, just went on to
So with
uni.
that, like that was like 4 years studying design or,
It
or art? Or?
it was a 3 year course, and it was kind of
Got it.
like a multidisciplinary course. So you could choose to focus in sort of like wood making design or graphic design, and I'm sure there were like another segment to it, but my focus was on graphic design. I can't really remember the sort of things that we were creating back then. I think it was just like a glorified arts and crafts class, which was fun.
Was it useful? Did you find it useful going to school?
Uh, I tell you what, I didn't find university useful.
Got it.
I felt like that was a waste of time. I sort of went there and I was expecting that to be a place where you go and they teach you the software. They teach you how to use Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, which each of those particular bits of software should be used. Um, and I felt like university is supposed to be there to really get you prepared and set up for the industry and the real world. And I feel like it failed me at that. I just don't feel like it did that at all. It seemed to be an extension of college in the respect of it just being a big arts and crafts class for 3 years, a really stressful one. Um, and I don't feel like I benefited from it. I always see my real education in design coming from the first 2 to 3 years in the industry, being that sort of intern.
When you finished university, or
Yeah, when I finished university,
did
sorry,
you
sort of
did you
go.
do projects or kind of did you do some work while studying as well, or did you only start working when you finished?
Um, while I was studying, I might have done a few things, but nothing major. Maybe,
Got it.
just a couple of bits of logo design for friends and things like that. Um, but yeah, it didn't really, I didn't really get started until after uni.
So what was your first job after school?
Um, I did a few internships that just lasted a couple of weeks, and it seemed to be, I don't know how it works now, but it seemed to be the norm that students would graduate and then they would do like a circuit of doing 2 weeks in one place, then a couple of weeks in another place, and then just go around and there'd be this carousel of students just going around these studios. And it felt like the students were being used by the studios for free,
For cheap
like,
labor. Yeah.
yeah, doing the legwork, making coffees, stuff like that. So that were actually quite disheartening going through that experience.
Is that what you
And
do during your internship, making coffees and stuff like that?
in some
Really?
places they get you really hands on, and they try and get you involved in projects. In other places, they just tend to, yeah, it's just like you used, like, oh, let's make the most of students wanting to work for free for a couple of weeks and get them in and just do yeah all the all the
Did
legwork.
you? You're based in Northern England, in Leeds. You're based in Leeds.
No, Barnsley.
Okay,
It's
got it.
close to Leeds.
Okay, and were you working over there or in London? I mean, there's fantastic design studios in London. I know.
There is, yeah. I stayed up north. I'm not a big fan of down south, to be honest. And with them being short internships, I saw it as too much of a pain to sort of set up accommodation for a couple of weeks down south.
Got it.
For someone that's just graduated uni, that was too expensive for me to even
Got it.
consider.
So did you find that unuseful as well, or did something good came out of it?
What's that, sorry?
So did you happy that you did those internships, or was that kind of a bummer as well, and nothing good came out of it?
No, I'm happy I did those. I think you kind of need to do those because each studio is different, and it opens your eyes to that. It just shows you that people have different processes and work and different team sizes and just work in different ways and different structures. And it's good to see that. It's good to get inside some of these places and just see how they operate.
Did it help you to get actual work later on? The fact that you had this experience, or
I think it helped me decide on the sort of place, the kind of
got it,
place that I wanted to work at. Sort of
got it.
like a smaller studio.
So that's what you did.
Yeah, that's what I did. So one of my internships was only meant to be 2 weeks, and then a guy I went to university with, he was meant to do the following 2 weeks. Excuse me, and he cancelled last minute. So then they asked me if I wanted to extend my time there and take over his 2 weeks, and I did that. And then it kind of kept just on rolling from there. I think there were a couple more cancellations, and then I kind of got my foot in the door a little bit. But strangely enough, it wasn't through design, it was through retouching. So
Oh,
through
that's
my
cool.
internship, they had me retouching suits, I think it was. So I had
Using
to make them
Photoshop.
look, yeah, using Photoshop. I had to like change the suit linings from being like plain to check, or change the color of the suit and all that kind of stuff. And like, once you learn how to do it, because I'd never done anything like that before, I were amazed. I'm like, oh wow, I can change the color of this guy's suit. This is cool. So I ended up getting stuck doing that. Um, I was stuck doing that for about a year actually.
So
Uh,
they actually
but
hired you full time to do this for
yeah, yeah,
pay.
yeah.
Yeah,
There,
that's
there
cool.
was actually another guy doing it when I was interning there, but um, I ended up being a bit better than him at it. So, you know, don't like saying it, but he ended up losing his job, and then I ended up gaining one in his place,
All right.
which is strange. But then that's where my education started. Because during that first year of retouching, I was sat on this table of like, I think there was 8 designers. And I really got my mentorship from one or two guys in particular. Just watching how they work, just taking a break from my own work and just
What
standing over
what
their
were they
shoulder.
doing? What kind of work the studio was doing?
At that time, it was predominantly print-based work, and more specifically, it was like lookbooks for fashion and retail brands.
Got it.
So, as a full-service agency, they would do the photo shoot, they would retouch the shots, and then design a nice lookbook for all of that to go into.
Got it.
That tended to be the sort of the main body of work that they did.
So how did you kind of rolled into web design?
Um, it was just after a few years, this agency I was working at decided to start transitioning more into digital.
So you end up staying there for multiple years.
I'm actually it's actually a bit of a crazy story with this agency. I
I
was there
love
for
how it
7.
starts from a boring story to a crazy story.
Yeah, it is. I've been missing loads of bits out, but I might as well be honest about it. Yeah, so the reason they went into digital is because they sort of went bankrupt, this agency, and they racked up a load of debt with all the printers in the local area, and they stopped paying them. And then when they sort of like liquidated and reformed under a different name, they still didn't pay off their debts with the printers. So they started new relationships with different print suppliers and did the same thing to them. Eventually, they ended up in a situation where no one in print would do work with them. So
That is
they
really
tran-
crazy. So they had to move into digital. They
so they
could
had
not
to
do
move
physical.
into digital. Yeah, I remember once I was
Wow,
on
that is a
I was
crazy
on
story.
yeah I were on holiday one year. I think I were in Ibiza, and I got a message on Facebook from one of the directors there, basically telling me that when I got back, that I would have to work from home because the office had a padlock on the door, because they'd not paid the landlord either for rent for the studio.
They were not very good business people, it sounds.
No, very, very poor.
Got it.
So yeah,
So they moved into started doing some digital work, and that's how you got a little bit of experience in web design.
yeah. So they got a new office space and then started again into digital. Got one or two guys into the team that had experience there, because I don't think any of us that were currently there had done much work in digital. Yeah, and it just went from there. I just started getting more and more into it, and it was quite quickly that I found that my preference was working in digital than it was in print. I think part of that is because in print, once it's been sent, that's it, it's done. If there's a mistake, you can't go into the code and change it. So
Yeah.
I think I like that safety net of working in digital.
Got it. And at what point, so how long did you end up staying in that agency?
7 years in total.
7 years. Wow, that's crazy. And from there,
Yes.
you decided to go freelance?
Yeah. It was a toss up between going freelance and trying a different agency out. Pardon me. But at that time, a friend of mine had just set up an agency specializing in, they're a marketing agency for the food service industry. So it's quite a niche area. And he just set up shop. So, and offered me like a small retainer. So I thought, well, it's very rare that you get that, you're thinking about going freelance and someone offers you like that
Security
security.
net. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So I
actually how
thought,
I
well,
went freelancing full time as well, by having
yeah,
a retainer. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I don't think I would have made the jump without it,
So
because
that
my
was a
main,
retainer kind of like full time, or that just kept you busy for a couple of days so that you have time to do other stuff as well?
I think to start with, it might have been like 3 days a week, or it might have been split over every morning of the week.
Got it.
And then I'd be free in the evenings to source my own work and that sort of thing. And then that changed over time as I got more clients. But yeah, I don't think that I would have gone freelance without that offer, just because my main fear at the time was not knowing how as a freelancer I would get work. It was all sort of new to
how
me.
did that ended up working? What did you find works for you?
Well, to start with, I've got to credit one of my friends, Tom Hurst, who gave me. He's a freelance web developer.
Yeah, I'm actually following him on Twitter. He's got like a really interesting Twitter feed.
Yeah, he's become this sort of go-to guy for freelance pricing
Yeah,
tips and tricks.
yeah. Did you learn
Um,
from him?
I learned a lot from him. Yeah, yeah. He's a good friend of mine. He lives. He actually used to live in this house.
It's funny. It's
Yeah.
cool.
So yeah,
So you were friends before, and then you started collaborating?
we've been friends for well over 10 years, and he started. Well, he's a freelance web developer, so he started getting some jobs in where there was a design element to it as well. So then he would refer me for that side of things and would collaborate. And it got me quite a bit of work that way. And then sometimes, the client would stay in touch with me if they wanted, another bit of design doing that didn't require Tom's services. So that helped me sort of retain a few clients. And then after that, I think it was kind of just like word of mouth and just marketing yourself. So just doing what you can on LinkedIn and Dribble, Instagram.
I was looking at your stuff, and I thought you were really active on Dribble and Behance. So I assumed that's kind of your main thing. But LinkedIn works for you? Are you active on LinkedIn as well?
LinkedIn, I think, works for getting work from agencies.
Got it.
I don't think it works for getting, sort of those direct clients, any sort of founders or CEOs or any of that stuff.
How does that work with agencies? Like, how does that usually develop into a project?
So from my communication to attracting sort of an email from them,
Yeah.
I think usually I'd put, it's when I put a post out there about availability, or I'll publish a new project. To be fair, I often forget to publish new projects to LinkedIn. It's just something I think about maybe a couple of weeks later. Oh, let's try it on there. And then, yeah, you tend to get an inbox from someone at an agency. Then that leads into a conversation
Got
on
it.
email.
Those are people that you had prior connections to them, or they just find you because the agencies are looking for freelancers? Are those agencies in your area or just all over?
No, they're from everywhere.
Got it.
To be honest, I've done a crappy job of like tracking where my leads come from. I don't always know if they're from LinkedIn, Dribble,
Got it.
or Instagram. Yeah, I forgot. What was the question?
No, I was just wondering how you use LinkedIn. I've never used LinkedIn personally. My LinkedIn is super not active. So
Oh yeah, you asked
that was
about the
interesting.
connections.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
the
was
connections thing. I remember there were a period, maybe a year into freelancing, where I looked up a lot of agencies that I were interested in and admired, and just followed members of staff, top level members of staff, and tried
got
to
it.
connect with them. So then when I did post something, it was in their line of sight.
That's
Um,
interesting.
but I don't think I sort of like hooked any of those agencies. It tended to be others, but I'm not sure how LinkedIn works. I don't know if can you see posts from people that you're not connected with?
I
Is it
don't
like
know. I'm actually
based on
not sure.
likes? Say if I followed you and you liked something, would that then show up?
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not a LinkedIn expert.
no, I'm not.
Cool. So do you mostly work with agencies, or do you do part of that, part direct with clients?
It's a bit of both. So, excuse me, I've got a couple of retainers set up with agencies for that takes up those two retainers take up 3 days a week of my time, and then I'm left with the other 2 days to work on project work. And
Got
that's
it.
the sort of balance that I wanted to strike because I've been offered, retainer work that would take me through Monday to Friday, but I like having the project work. There's something exciting about, these one-off projects, just a new relationship, a new client, new products, and just doing something different. And often with agencies, there can be, I'd say 90% of my work is white label. So it never sees the light of day.
What do you mean white label?
I'm not allowed to post it on my social media channels or
Oh, got it, got it,
our
got it. So
website.
they post
Yeah,
your work. That is what you mean. Yeah, but it's still
yeah,
web
yeah,
work. It's still web design work. You,
yeah,
yeah, got it.
yeah.
Okay.
It's just it's some of my strongest work. I can never sort of put to my name.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if you basically what you're saying is if you only do agency work, you won't be able to build a portfolio and post your work and that kind of stuff.
I think it'd be tougher.
Yeah.
Some agencies let you show the work, um, others don't. So I think you need to allow yourself a bit of a. It depends on the deal that you strike with the agency, but I think it's important to always have something that you can work on that you can put on your website,
Yeah.
and just so that it's up to date and you can always market yourself because you don't know when that relationship might end, and then you're left with a portfolio that's a few years out of date.
Yeah, for sure. I know that's where I am at the moment. um, so do you have a different, like, how do you work? Do you have a different process when you work with agencies versus when you work with the clients directly? I assume it's probably a little bit different.
Yeah, because when you work for an agency, usually there's project managers involved, so they do all the client facing side of things and all the discovery work, formulate a brief, and then pass that on to me. So it's kind of with the agency work, you're pretty much straight into design. With the
Do they take care of the content as well? If you need to develop, I don't know, copy, imagery, all of that kind of stuff? Who takes care of that?
yeah, it's not all, it differs. So sometimes it doesn't really depend on the agency. I think it depends more on the client and whether they've got it or not. So sometimes I get asked to, source stock imagery to use, um, maybe as placeholder, maybe to use as the final thing. It depends. And other times I get given, a library of images and Word documents for content. Uh, so yeah, it's a mix. Sometimes I've got to sort of like make it up as I go along. Other times there's very specific content to work with.
Got it. And what's your process once you get the brief? Like, how do you usually tackle that?
Um, I like to, well, most of the time the websites I design are for pre-existing brands, so they've already got some sort of presence online. So first, it's a case of checking that out, um, and just trying to looking through the brief and looking through what they've got and trying to get a sense of where they want to go. If it's a good brief, it paints a really clear picture on the sort of aesthetic that they like, the direction they want to go in, and what they want to achieve from the website. Um, so it's a case
So
of like,
so
sort of,
they already, just to clarify, they already kind of sync with the clients about the visual aesthetic and the kind of creative direction that is kind of already
so
formulated.
Sometimes it is, yeah. I mean, part of my process usually when I start designing is so with a website, I'll just start on the homepage to begin with, and I'll usually propose working up 2 to 3 concepts for that homepage, and that's mainly it's kind of I use that as a tool to get a better understanding of the direction they want to go in. So I'll try and make these 2 3 concepts as different to each other as possible, even though they're using the same content, just different ways of designing, certain blocks. Um, and from there, you get feedback and you get a much stronger idea of what's working for them, and like what might be too modern, and you know,
Do you
yeah,
work with wireframes? Are there wireframes somewhere involved in the process?
yeah.
Do you mock
Usually,
up some wireframes before you go ahead and do the visuals?
the wireframes are usually just to this sort of
Yeah.
standard,
So for
just loose.
yourself, just for yourself.
Yeah. It's
Got it.
not something that I present to clients. It's just something to help me.
Yeah. Cool. So you design a few concepts for the homepage, you get feedback, and then you progress
Yeah,
from there. Got it. Do you find style guides and that kind of stuff useful? Do you create those things when you work on a website?
yeah. It's something that I do instinctively, I think. Um, so consistency is the key with anything in design. So if I design a homepage, I'll be considerate throughout of the components that I'm using. Like make sure I'm using a limited number of font sizes, thinking about having the H tags and things like that in mind. Components like buttons and things like that, just making sure they're consistent, and again they're limited to like primary, secondary, how the colors are used on those. Like all those little things are considered as I'm going through. They're not treated as like a separate entity. But then maybe sometimes at the end of the project, I might collect those and put them in a style guide in case the client wants to create new pages with those elements.
Got it. Cool. Um, I'm just curious to hear kind of your thoughts about when you're looking at web design, what do you think makes for a good website?
Hmm. It depends what the website's trying to do, what they're trying to achieve. But for me,
I saw
I
that you
mean,
had a lot of experience in e-commerce, right? Or am I just
yeah, because the agency I worked in, when they did transition to digital, it was still fashion and retail.
got it?
So it was e-commerce websites.
All right, so let's say
Um,
in e-commerce, what do you think makes for a good e-commerce?
a good e-commerce site. Thing is, people like me and you will look at websites and we judge them on how beautiful and pretty they are. Um, that's just the designer in me. If I were gonna put a UX head on, then I'd probably go through these websites in more detail and say, "Nah, this doesn't work. It's not user friendly enough." But for me personally, is yeah, it's just aesthetics. I just like being sort of excited by a website and engaged by it.
Would that be like what visuals, the use of typography, layout?
All of it. It
Yeah.
can differ. It can differ, yeah, drastically. Um, just because there's so many different styles of design out there, isn't there? It doesn't matter on the style as long as it's well executed, and then I'm hooked.
Do you feel like
You know,
sometimes there's a conflict between you and the client or the agency because you would kind of push more into the beautiful visual and they would push into more the functional
all the
conversions?
time.
All the time.
all the time.
That's the war of art, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's where those two early concepts that I spoke about come into play, because I always use one of them to be a bit flashy and to show off like modern design trends, basically apply those to the design, or be a bit more out there, a bit braver and edgier. And then the other one of the other concepts will always be more traditional. Still try and
So
have
when you
something about
present
it.
a few concepts, when you mentioned I'll present 2, 3 concepts, one of them will be more kind of extreme and one of them will be more maybe traditional.
Yeah, yeah, and it might not be that extreme or that traditional, but there'll always be that sort of that face off, and then I then immediately understand if this clients, like if they want something really stand out and quite bold and brave, or if they want to play it a bit safer.
Got it. Yeah, that's an interesting kind of an edge. I saw also on your Behance and stuff that you're doing a lot of kind of self-initiated projects.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why you do this? Like, what role does it play for you?
Because yeah, I mean, the life of a freelancer, I'm sure you'll have had these experiences. Sometimes you don't always fill out your week. Sometimes you're left with a couple of days where you either haven't managed to get a project booked in or you've got a cancellation. It's too late to fill the gap. So usually with those days, instead of writing them off completely, I still try and spend the day in my office and do something. And sometimes it's like a creative stress relief as well. If maybe I have been pegged back a lot in recent projects going down the traditional route, then that's when I'm like, right, I'm actually going to use these ideas now and create something and just kind of like, show off a little bit and experiment as well at the same time, try new things out. Like one of the recent self-initiated pieces had a lot of color in it. I'm usually quite reserved with use of color, use like a muted palette. So it was a chance to like try that out, and it's just experimenting and trying to develop through self-initiated briefs. Because I think if you set the brief, there's nothing holding you back. There's no one pushing back. You can be as creative as you want. So that's what I try and do with those.
That's cool. So if I understand correctly, if you collaborate with Tom a lot, you don't do the development of your website yourself, right?
I did my own website using Simplice, but
Oh, that's
I
cool.
don't do any development now.
So when you work with somebody else, how do you communicate? I mean, I saw that really cool glasses concept that you did. How do you communicate those interactions in animation? Do you use After Effects? Like, how do you usually explain to the
Yeah.
developer, here I want this kind of...
Oh no, I did that. I did the animations on that one.
Using
Um,
After Effects?
yeah,
Got
it was a pain in the ass, just
it.
because I've got no experience with After Effects, and I follow so many amazing designers on Dribble that have got that something extra in their repertoire, which is being able to add motion to their design. And it's something that I've envied for a long time, but I still haven't found enough time to really learn it to the point where I'm comfortable with just jumping into, pardon me, After Effects and doing it. So to create that animation, I had all the ideas of what I wanted to happen. So I sketched out a storyboard, but I had to watch a tutorial for every single element of that, and it took me about 2 days
Oh,
to
wow.
animate it. And at the end, I was like, yes, finally, I've done it. But when you're watching that many tutorials over that long of a period of time, then by the time you get to the last couple of tutorials, you forgot everything that you've learned before. So it's kind of like it's a process. I need to do more of it before I can comfortably say that I can add motion to my designs.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Is there anything, I think we're going to wrap up soon. Is there anything kind of that you think you would like to share if you were starting from scratch today, or, if you would give a tip to yourself just coming out of school, about to do like an internship or something, what would you do? Or what would you tell
Uh,
yourself?
what would I tell myself? Um, Pay attention during those early years in an agency, and find someone that you can latch onto from a learning perspective. Find a mentor and just learn with them. I put The reason I'm putting emphasis on that is because what I said earlier about I don't feel like I got set up properly from university and from school. My education came from a couple of mentors in those early years, and I think it's been invaluable to me, that experience. So
I think a lot of
I,
people struggle with, what does it mean to find a mentor? Like, how did that work out for you?
yeah, I mean, this guy didn't advertise himself as a mentor.
Yeah,
He
of
was
course.
this one guy in particular that I'm thinking of. He was a senior designer when I started as a junior. So I suppose it's just kind of like finding those, senior members of staff that are accessible. 'Cause some people might close themselves off, that are willing to give you some guidance, and just don't be afraid to ask questions and ask for feedback all the time, and just try and take that and learn from it and grow.
Nice. All right. Thanks so much, Jordan. It's really been a pleasure to chat and getting to know you better. Keep doing amazing work, and
Thank you.
yeah, looking forward to seeing your new designs and your new animation and motion skills coming together.
Don't put any pressure on motion, God. That might
For
that might be
sure.
a while before you see more of that.
All right. Thanks a lot, brother.
All right. Cheers,
Bye.
mate.